Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 14, Text 10 to 20. So it's a long 10 texts. So I'll read text 20 with the Sanskrit and the translation. I'll read the first 10 straight. Text 10, translation. Shukdev Goswami continued. By Brihaspati's order, Tara, who was very much ashamed, immediately gave birth to the child, who was very beautiful, with a golden bodily hue. Both Brihaspati and the moon god Soma desired the beautiful child. Fighting again broke out between Brihaspati and the moon god, both of whom claimed, "This is my child, not yours." All the saints and demigods present asked Tara whose child the newborn baby actually was. But because she was ashamed, she could not immediately answer. The child then became very angry and demanded that his mother immediately tell the truth. "You unchaste woman," he said, "what is the use of your unnecessary shame? Why do you not admit your fault? Immediately tell me about your faulty behavior." Lord Brahma then brought Tara to a secluded place, and after pacifying her, he asked to whom the child actually belonged. She replied very slowly, "This is the son of Soma, the moon god." Then the moon god immediately took charge of the child. O Maharaj Parikshit, when Lord Brahma saw that the child was deeply intelligent, he gave the child the name Buddha. The moon god, the ruler of the stars, enjoyed great jubilation because of this son. Thereafter, from Buddha, through the womb of Ila, a son was born named Pururava, who was described in the beginning of the 9th canto. When his beauty, personal qualities, magnanimity, behavior, wealth, and power were described by Narada in the court of Lord Indra, the celestial woman Urvashi was attracted to him. Pierced by the arrow of Cupid, she thus approached him. Having been cursed by Mitra and Varuna, the celestial woman Urvashi had acquired the habits of a human being. Therefore, upon seeing Pururava, the best of males, whose beauty resembled that of Cupid, she controlled herself and then approached him. When King Pururava saw Urvashi, his eyes became jubilant in ecstasy of joy, and the hairs on his body stood on end. With mild, pleasing words, he spoke to her as follows. King Pururava said, "O most beautiful woman, you are welcome. Please sit here and tell me what I can do for you. You may enjoy with me as long as you desire. Let us pass our life happily in a sexual relationship." Text 20. Urvashi uvacha kasyastvaina sajjeta manodrishtischa sundarin cha sundara yadanghantaram asadya chavateha riramsayam. Urvashi replied, "O most handsome man, who is the woman whose mind and sight would not be attracted by you? If a woman takes shelter of your chest, she cannot refuse to enjoy with you in a sexual relationship." Purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When a beautiful man and a beautiful woman unite and embrace one another, how within these three worlds can they check their sexual relationship? Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says, "Yan maithunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham." Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody for this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. I seek all of your blessings. If Adi Purush Prabhu and Arjuna Prabhu and all other senior devotees are there, then kindly seeking your permission and blessings. And I hope I can serve all of us by remembering this message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and let's see what we can learn from this today. So this is a very interesting part of the 9th canto, where this episode of the fight for first the wife between the moon god, an exalted personality, and the spiritual master of the demigods. And the moon god steals Tara, and then Tara goes, and Tara also wanted to actually enjoy with the moon god, and so she's there. And then Brihaspati wages a war, and the demons and the demigods fight. And then here, finally, there is about to be peace, but then Tara is pregnant, and nobody knows who's the father. And then she's asked, and then the father is Somgod, so he takes Buddha. And the reason the story came was because the lineage of kings is being described. And then Shukdev Goswami talks about Pururava, whose story will be the remainder of this chapter. So I was just thinking on focusing on this last purport, and let's see what we can take from there. But I once heard something very interesting about these stories of the Bhagavatam, that the entire Bhagavatam is the first up to the 10th canto. The 10th canto leads us into Krishna's pastimes, which are very beautiful, which are very sweet, which are the essence and the reason for our devotional service, is so that we can one day truly appreciate, truly just serve and want to be a part of Krishna Lila, especially in our path of bhakti, in the higher advanced stages of bhakti, as we will learn about in the Nectar of Devotion. It's very, very advanced stages, of course. Right now we're still on sadhana bhakti in the beginning stages. But in the advanced stages, the devotee in Raganuga Ragatmika Bhakti, he chooses one of the residents of Vrindavan, whom he is very inspired by, just like we are in this world, and we are inspired by someone from some field. So similarly, he chooses someone whom he is very inspired by. For example, if I want to serve Krishna as in parental affection, then perhaps I really start getting attracted to Nanda Baba, the father of Krishna. And I really start understanding his life and how did he do it and what was his mood. And in that way, I'm going to completely emulate him. And so to come to that stage of this kind of devotion, I go backward, then I'll have to let go of so many things, so many attachments, so many wrong ideas and conceptions, and really come to the stage where I simply want to serve Krishna. And to be able to do that, now that as Krishna says in the Gita, what can repression accomplish? Remember this phrase? And this phrase was specifically told to Arjuna when he said, I don't want to fight. I know that's my nature, but I'm done with this. I've done so many wars, I've done all these, I don't want it anymore. Krishna says, but you can't repress. So then it seems on one side that we have to experience all our desires. We have to express them, we have to experience them. And on the other end are these stages of bhakti which expect us to be completely pure, completely selfless, already ready for just serving Krishna. How do we do that? And so the answer lies in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the stories of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the flow of the Bhagavatam from Canto 1 to Canto 9 is arranged in such a way that we can, just through oral reception, just through hearing and reading these stories, we can kind of experience all these desires and quickly make progress worth lifetimes of experiences if we really deeply hear these stories. That's why, if you remember, at the end of so many of these stories in the Bhagavatam, there is a Phala Shruti. Phala Shruti means what is the fruit of hearing this story. And you'll remember that every major section story ends with this, which says, if anybody hears this story, then he's freed, he's liberated from this, he's done with this, he'll get this. Remember, it has why? Because really, if we hear these stories and truly are able to digest them and realize them and appreciate them, then we are kind of done with perhaps that experience which we would have to go through too, which we would have to be involved in also. So and I think already we can kind of experience it, right? Like when we remember our the story, like we are going through our daily life, and sometimes we remember a shloka, or we remember a story where we are inspired, or we like I was speaking to one devotee yesterday, and I was asking him that what keeps you going, and he says the story of Draupadi, that how she was saved at the last. So it's kind of he's experiencing that. Or if someone is asked, yeah, like when I was a brahmachari in India, we used to have our brahmachari circles, like where we share, okay, what's inspiring us, what's keeping us going, and everyone used to share, this story which I'm reading from the Bhagavatam is really teaching me that how I should do this or should not do this, etc. So I'm kind of already experiencing that desire, being done with it. And therefore, these stories in the Bhagavatam are there, and their descriptions are so quite vivid, quite clear, quite like in this chapter, this discussion, Pururava is so upfront. I was talking to another devotee about this, and I was asking her, if someone told you this upfront, let us pass our life happily in a sexual relationship, what would she was like, oh no. But then we were thinking that, well, even today it does happen, right? There are people who come for dating, and they're very clear, I'm only here for this reason, and that's it. And so in this way, these stories kind of give us that experience. We don't have to go through it again. Okay. Now in this purport, so that was one thing I wanted to bring up from why these stories are here at all. Another thing in this purport, Prabhupada writes, the last line, he's quoting Prahlad Maharaj's instructions, Yan Maithunadi Grihamedi Sukham Hi Tucham. And he says, so in this text, there are two things which he says. One is the word tucham. The word tucham, that's the end, the middle of the text. He says tucham means which is very insignificant. And he describes, he is comparing sex life to be insignificant. And on the beginning of the text, he says that it is sex pleasure is compared to relieving an itch. When my hand is itching and I relieve that itch, that's the pleasure. And actually, relieving an itch is quite a good pleasure, right? It's if you're itching and just that relief is quite. But it's interesting that you have to go into a certain kind of pain to experience the relief. So you're just coming back to normal. Right now, my hand is not giving me any pleasure. But if it starts itching and I relieve that itch, I feel a pleasure. It's not really pleasure. It's like just coming back to normal. And this example is actually used for every material pleasure in that sense. It's sometimes said that it's not really pleasure, it's just a relief from the suffering, relief from my currently whatever I'm going through. The relief is this material happiness. And of course, we also know that it's also in psychology or the medical field, it's a problem where we do what is called relief eating, or I don't know what it's called, right? We either eat or binge on something or something like that just to relieve ourselves. And there's one nice memory of Prabhupada where he's talking to, I'm forgetting the devotee's name, but he's sitting back and he's saying material life is like itching, itch, itch, itch. And he says it feels very nice. You keep itching. And then he says, but then blood comes. When you itch too much, then there's going to be blood. So I was just thinking of this text, Sukham Hi Tucham. And here Prabhupada is talking about how sex life is insignificant, how it is, it's nothing great. But then I thought, There are two kinds of people in this world. One is Prahlad Maharaj, who is speaking about this, and he's saying, what's so great in sex life? It's nothing great. It's don't give everything just for that. Don't just live for that. And yet there is another class of people. So I do life coaching and I keep searching what other coaches are doing, what they're trying to teach, what they're trying to say. So I came upon a very famous coach today. I'm quite sure you know the person's name. I won't say the name. At least the men may know because he's a men's coach and he's very clear. If you go to his website, here it's his name, and then under his name very clearly is written, I will teach you how to make more money and have more sex. That's it. And his video starts by saying this. He says, every man wants two things, more money and more sex. I will help you get there. That's it. And he's got big following. He charges big money, but everybody goes. And I was wondering, but how come? How can there be these two completely different views? Here is Prahlad Maharaj, and definitely a big following, and so many people who understand this point that sex pleasure is not the real. That's not the ultimate thing. That's for a very advanced soul. That's nothing. For someone who's aspiring, who is beginning to even understand, I want to overcome this, etc. And then there's this other class of people who are like, this is everything. So what's happening? So who is true? Who is right? Because if Prahlad Maharaj is saying it's nothing, then shouldn't everyone say that? Shouldn't everyone come to this realization? And I also found in my own life, perhaps I was at sometimes at this point, yes, this is everything. Sometimes at this point, sometimes it changes, sometimes. And then I was wondering what takes a person here or wherever. So this is my little 2-cent understanding and realization about this. This story of Pururava is actually both of these kinds of people in one story. Pururava part 1, which we read about this, is like this life coach. All I want is money and sex. I'll be happy. And that's his story. And if you read it here, that's what he's doing. He's all about, he gets Urvashi, who's a heavenly damsel. He's really happy. He's really enjoying and unlimitedly enjoying. And then he loses her, but he just wants her. And you'll read later in the chapter, he's just pursuing her. He goes to the forest. He's so crazy. She's gone back to the heavens. And she takes pity on him. First, she gives him wise advice. He doesn't listen. Then she takes pity on him and says, I'll just be with you for one day in an entire year. And that's all he lives for. He says, that's fine. I'm good. And then he's living for that. And then I think she discontinues, something happens. And then he again prays to the demigods that I want Urvashi back. And they said, no, she can't come back. So they create a false Urvashi named Agnisthali and give him Agnisthali. And then he's happy and he enjoys with Agnisthali. He says, wait a minute, this is not Urvashi. No, I want Urvashi. And like this, he's passing years, but he is not coming to a conclusion or a realization on it. He's not at all decreasing in he's not saying it's tucham. He's not saying it's relieving energy. He's happy and he's excited about it. But Pururava part 2, which comes in the 11th canto, several chapters later. And I remember, just a little off topic, I remember when Radhanath Maharaj was speaking on this story, he said that in those days, Prabhupada was writing the Bhagavatam slowly. So canto by canto would come out. And this story ends at a place where it seems Pururava is kind of happy. He gets what he wanted. And then this whole theory about our, sex life is not everything, it kind of doesn't hold true anymore. Then the Bhagavatam's understanding of spiritual life being the highest pleasure in material life, not really giving us happiness, doesn't hold true because this story, he's happily ever after. And then he said, so 9th canto came, and after a few months, 10th canto came, and then this, and we were all waiting that there is this one incomplete story in the Bhagavatam. Usually all the other stories finish start to end, but his is not over. And then 11th canto, then comes Aila Gita, which is suddenly Pururava comes back into the picture. And then Pururava part 2 is in total agreement with what Prahlad Maharaj says. He suddenly gets this realization. And if we have time, I think we'll hear some of his prayers, what he's singing as part 2. So again, So what can bring us, or what can bring a person from this stage of, as this coach is saying, money and sex is everything, to at least accepting at the very beginning, very starting, that okay, I accept it's not everything. Maybe I'm not ready to let go. Maybe I'm not, but at least, and that's called adho shraddha. That's initial faith. That just okay, I'm open to at least understanding it, considering it, thinking about it, accepting it. Maybe I'm not there yet. And then as advancement comes, as one progresses, then one is starting to let go to whatever degree, and then making progress here. And what makes that switch is experience. Do you okay, can we have a raise of hands or something? Do you think experience is what will make that difference, that when someone is finally experienced, he's done with it, again and again I've experienced it, and then all right, now I know, now I'm ready, now I understand this is not everything, I need to move on, I need to look for something higher? Is experience everything? The answer is no, because the whole world is experiencing. But experience doesn't teach only when experience is backed with the right knowledge. Because what knowledge does is it directs our conclusion of that experience. If I don't know, where do I direct my conclusion? If I don't have an awareness or a knowledge or spiritual understanding, then what happens is, then I have, right, I don't have a new way to think. I don't have a new way of considering my situation. I don't have an alternative opinion. I don't have a higher platform from which to view my life. Then because of the lack of wisdom, even though I'm experiencing it, I won't want to come out of it. I won't know, because I don't know better. Ignorance, I don't know better. But is it just knowledge? No, not even just that. Then there has to be a factor of grace. There has to be a factor of Krishna's grace. Because even if you have a lot of experience, and if you are the wisest and the most learned, still we know that still, as Krishna says in the Gita, even a man of the greatest intelligence, his mind is swayed away, can be swayed away in a moment. Because that's the power of the senses. That's the power of the illusory energy. That's the power of actually my own desire to enjoy. And so therefore Krishna's grace, and then through experience and through knowledge and through Krishna's grace, then one begins to understand, begins to accept, begins to switch from thinking that sex is everything to, no, there is something more than this. There is something beyond this. There's something higher than this. And I mentioned one thing, that actually what actually holds us back the most is what is actually not. I'll tell you a small story. So there's once a king, and he was sitting in his palace, and he used to always, many sages and saints would come, and they would have nice Bhagavatam classes and this and that, but they could all notice he's still attached. He's still even attachment is not a problem, but he's not even ready to accept and agree to what we're trying to say. And after many years passed like this, and finally one sadhu came one day, and he was speaking, and the king said, what do I do? There is so much around me and this, and I can't help it. It's like, and suddenly the sadhu said, and then the king said, please help me become detached. Please help me, I request you. And then the sadhu smiled. Suddenly the sadhu stood up and started running. And then everyone's like, where is the sadhu going? And the king ran after him. What's happened to him? And they ran, and the sadhu ran into the beautiful garden, and there was a beautiful tree with a thick, strong trunk. And the sadhu tightly embraced the trunk, gripped it hard, and said, let me go, let me go. And everyone was waiting and like, what's going on? And then after a few minutes, the king came near him and said, what are you doing? He's saying, tell this tree to cut it down. This tree has caught me. Leave tree. And the king said, just let go. Sadhu, you're making a scene here. Just let go. And then the sadhu let go, and he said, that is you. You don't want to let go. So who can help, and who can? And then I was just thinking about this in my own life. I've noticed that yes, sometimes I have experience and knowledge and Krishna's grace. I know, right? We know that We can't even say, oh, Krishna is not being graceful upon me. And I used to sometimes think like this, and sometimes my spiritual mentors would say, really? You don't have the wisdom of the Gita? Are devotees not ever ready to help you? Is the temple not just ever open? And the darshan of the deities, are there not a flood of programs you can go to? You can go to the kirtans, you have all the books at your disposal, you have unlimited lectures on the internet, you have prasadam which is always available, you have, what do you not have? Is Krishna's grace not in your life? Are you living in the middle of the Amazon jungle where you can say, where is Krishna? Krishna is like more than around you, more than everywhere, more than, are there not enough ways to engage in service? Are there, what are you talking about? Krishna's grace is unlimited. And then from that day, I never said, yes, there's no Krishna's grace in my life. So we definitely have that too. But then I realized what was it was actually my own deep down. I didn't want to let go. I don't want to change my desire. I still want to cling on to the little hope and be happy. I think I can enjoy. I think there's just something good here. I think I didn't do it the right way the last time. Now I know how to enjoy. Now I know how to be happy. And this time it'll give me something different. This time it will give me something better. And so in the Bhagavad-Gita also, there's one in the 16th chapter, text 20, Krishna becomes really heavy. And he says, to these lowest amongst men, I cast them down into, I'm paraphrasing, cast them into the lowest species of life, and there they will rot eternally. Something like that. He speaks to that effect. And then one of the acharyas has commented, and he says, Arjuna asks Krishna, Krishna, why do you want to do that? You are God. You're the supreme controller. You're the supreme, you're the best. Can't you change that? Can't you? If you wanted to, you could. You could just switch it up. You could change their karma. You could change their desire. You could change it. Why don't you? And Krishna says, I want to. I'm eager to. I'm ever ready to. I'm just waiting to. But they don't have the least tiniest seed of a desire to do change. So what do? I can't help it. I can't interfere in the free will of a living being. Then they're just flowing with whatever is the law of the world. And therefore I always feel to myself, especially, that it's ultimately my own desire which is holding me back from going from being from this kind of Pururava, this story, to the realization he goes through. And there's one very interesting thing which Prabhupada writes in one of the purports I used to read and I often remember now, where he says, sense gratification and Krishna consciousness go ill together. And this phrase, go ill together, it's clear, right? Go ill together means two things which just can't go together. Just like in Ayurveda, they have this concept of milk and salt go ill together. Never have anything milk, anything with salt, any kind of thing. No, milk and fruit, no. Or perhaps in, I don't know, every field has this kind of, no, these two things just can't go together. And similarly in Krishna consciousness and bhakti, two things which can't go together. And so this phrase, go ill together, Prabhupada has used often in his books. And I'll just tell you where all differently it comes in a different way. Very interesting. And this was a struggle I went through in my initial years in Krishna consciousness, where I thought, why can't they go together? Why can't I also enjoy and be a great bhakta and be a great person to, I can have best of both worlds, I used to think. And then, so when I was small, I used to ask my mom, I grew up in a bhakti tradition. So I used to ask her, I was quite young, I said, why can't I just have 2-3 girlfriends on the side and I'll do my Krishna conscious thing and I'll be really, and once she told me about Markat Vairagya. This is a phrase used in the Vedic texts, that Markat is monkey, Vairagya is renunciation. So the monkey looks like he's very renounced, lives in the forest, no clothes, eats only fruits and trees, simple life, sleeping on the banks of the river, wakes up early. Monkeys wake up early, sleep early. They're usually always around temples because that's where the pilgrims throw them bananas and stuff. But he's got like 15 girlfriends whom he is always going around. So Markat Vairagya was the use of that kind of renunciation. But then it took me time, and still sometimes I think it's possible. I can do both. And in some things, it's deeply starting to set in, and deeply starting to realize on certain things I know, no, I just can't do this, because it will just so much take away from my bhakti, take away. But on some things I'm still like, I think I can do both. I don't think that's going to be, and I'm still praying to get that. And as I said before, I think it's still my desire stuck there. I don't want to agree that it's not going to go together. Somehow I want to squeeze it up. But let's see where all Krishna's Prabhupada speaks is. So in the 5th chapter, Bhagavad-Gita Text 21, in the Karma Yoga section, he speaks this sentence. He writes, spiritual realization and sex pleasure go ill together. Spiritual realization and sex pleasure go ill together. Although I would just like to say that there is a complete philosophy today by a great guru. What's the time? Okay, I'll say it in very brief, just so we know, right? Because the Gita says, jnana, ajnana, that it's good to know both what is truth and what is not truth, so that we know when we meet up with something which is not truth, we are aware already, this is not true. So there was this great Indian guru who came in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s sometimes, and he was a strong celibate. He was really powerful, and he was extremely influential, had a great following, and his whole thing was about celibacy. You just can't engage in sex life and have great spiritual realization. So learn to regulate it, learn to control it. And people looked up to him. And actually he gave a challenge. He said, I can sleep with any woman and I won't be agitated. And a great Hollywood actress took up the challenge. She said, fine, you sleep with me. That night he fell, he couldn't control. And the next day he changed his philosophy. And he said, oh, actually, the phrase he used is called Sambhog se Samadhi, that from enjoyment, you get emancipation. That's the real philosophy. The more you enjoy, the more you indulge, you'll get realization. He was actually kicked out of America, and he had to go back to India, and he set up, but again, he got a following. And that's his philosophy now. You enjoy as much as you can, because that's where your realization lies. But as your Prabhupada is clearly saying, spiritual realization and sex pleasure go ill together. Then in Queen Kunti's prayers, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 27, Prabhupada writes, material hankerings and spiritual advancement go ill together. That means we can't be simultaneously materially hankering and also want to make great spiritual progress. That go ill together. In Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text 26, where is described Emperor Parikshit, there it's another very interesting one. Blazing fire and moist fuel go ill together. And there Prabhupada talks a lot about discipline. And he says, discipline is feeding dry fuel into the flame of our bhakti. When we are disciplined, like for example, here we have Bhagavatam every day, same time in the morning. Every day we're going to sit 45 minutes. That's a discipline. And this discipline is that beautiful dry fuel which we're going to feed into the fire. When the word discipline comes, I often remember a phrase which says, the pain of discipline is much lesser than the pain of regret, right? Either we can live our life without discipline, but then we will regret, or we go through the plane of discipline now, and then there's a lot of pain, but then we'll come out the happiest ever. So that's why he's saying blazing fire and moist fuel go ill together. Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text 27, the next text. Prabhupada gives another phrase. He says, material attachment and taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna go ill together. So I can't be materially attached on one side and I want Krishna on one side. That's not going to happen. I have to let go of something to then I can't hold both. I can, but I can't hold both. I have to let go of one. And there he writes, and how does that work? So this one I was thinking, but how? Because right now I am materially attached. I can't let go. I just can't let go. I can't even think of it right now completely. Theoretically, I understand I have to let go and completely, but no, I can't do it. So then Prabhupada says, but how it actually works is, so right now I am materially attached. I recognize it, I accept it, and then I undertake devotional service in practice, sadhana bhakti. And through that practice will come some purification, will come realization, will come deep understanding of what I'm actually going through, what am I experiencing. I'll be able to go backward through the layers of stopping my strong identification with the body, with the mind, with the intelligence of the ego, and more understand I'm the pure eternal soul. And from there will come the maturity in my practice. And from there will come the ability now and the strength to let go. It takes a lot of strength to let go. It doesn't take strength to hold on, right, to material things. It's so easy, but to let go takes so much strength. But then I let go, and then I'll be able to fully take shelter of Krishna. So then reading that gave me some hope. Okay, that I can do. So I can at least increase my sadhana bhakti, my practice or devotional service, and recognizing, I'm sorry, Krishna, I'm still attached. What do I do? But this is where the direction I want to go in. And then he writes in Canto 1, Text 16, Chapter 21, education and bad character go ill together. That's when the Gita, it says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. He says, if you have Vidya, you will have humility. If you have Vidya, knowledge, and you don't have humility, there's no learning. Then you have no education. And same thing Prabhupada is writing here. If you have bad character, and you know where this comment is coming, it's coming in the predictions of the age of Kali. And in the purport, Prabhupada is writing how the leaders all over the world, administrative leaders, organizational leaders, they'll have big education, big learning, but they'll have no character, no integrity, no honesty, hypocrisy. And therefore, it will only be futile. Their endeavors at world peace, the endeavors at equality, the endeavors, whatever we see right in front of us happening. Why is it so difficult to make social change? The whole world is screaming about climate change. Nothing's really happening. Are people really? Why? Because there is education, but no character. And therefore it's not going to go anywhere. And then one last one, I'll tell you. In the Narada Bhakti Sutra, in text 48, Prabhupada writes, an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness go ill together. And that's the last one for today. I think there are more, but this is what I could find. An easygoing life and Krishna consciousness. And so if we want to have Krishna consciousness, of course, Krishna consciousness is a happy life. It is an easy life. It's the easiest and simplest life. But what Prabhupada is trying to say is it can't be a carefree, irresponsible, I don't care kind of life. I'm just going to do what I want when I want. Not that way. It's 7:58. Sorry, I thought we would also have had time to discuss part 2, Pururava, and you'll be so amazed to hear the two sides of the same person. And when I was reading the story, I thought this is exactly me. This is how exactly I think. When I'm in my enjoyment mode, this is how I'm thinking. And when I'm in my renounced mode or my realized mode, I'm completely saintly. And those are the thoughts coming out. But it's interesting if you want to read. Then Pururava comes back in Canto 11, text chapter 26. That's called the Aila Gita, like the Bhagavad-Gita, Uddhav Gita. This is the Aila Gita, the song of King Pururava, and deep, beautiful realizations. I think my time is over. Thank you all for joining, and I hope I could serve you in a small little way, and I hope you can bless me and pray that I can also make some advancement in my spiritual life. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you.